just go sneaking up on me like that? You almost scared me there. Well, I'm the Tech Lead, and welcome back to another episode of the Tech Lead. It is coffee time. Now, I want to talk to you today about what do programmers actually do. I've been a programmer for the past 10 plus years, and I feel that I'm qualified to talk to you about this. Now, a programmer is a very peculiar occupation. It is not like a coder, quite, and it's not really like a software engineer or a software developer. These are all very different things. The programmer is somebody who knows how to program. There are people who code, there are people who engineer things, develop things. The programmer programs. What does that mean? So I thought I would take a moment to break this down for you all to truly understand what it means to be a programmer. Now, one thing that programmers do naturally is communicate with computers. What to you may look like just a group of zeros and ones, 0011, 00011. It doesn't make sense to you, but I can actually read that. You know, I can take a look at a whole string of assembly code, zeros and ones, hexadecimal digits, and I can interpret that a lot like in The Matrix, if you've seen that movie. I'm trained to actually be able to read this assembly code and to be able to communicate with machines. I can see the language and understand what they're saying. Like this piece of code here, it's actually very beautiful. It was written by a machine, and it's a poem. It's a poem about the life of a machine and what it's like to be different from the humans. It's very difficult to translate something like this, an emotion, if you can even call it that, into English for humans to understand. You know, the language of English is made for humans and is made to express emotion, but machines don't quite have emotions, and that cannot quite be expressed using just plain English words. You have to use that machine code to be able to express the so-called emotions, the structural integrity, the form of artificial emotion, so to speak, that machines may exhibit. The second thing that you may not know about programmers is that at the end of the night, after dinner's over, when you say goodnight and you go off to bed, the programmer does not actually go to bed. We actually go back to the computer and we continue to hack, and we hack all night. What may be the end of the day for you and you go off to sleep and you have your sweet dreams was only the beginning of the night for us. And it is when I began to shed my normal human behaviors. You know, I don't need sunlight. Sure, I might need some sunlight to sustain my physical self, but the radiant light from the monitor is actually what sustains me as a programmer. And I need about 8 hours of that every day to remain productive, to remain a programmer. Now, the third thing that programmers can do is we can repair things. I can repair any piece of machinery. You name it, if it's mechanic or electrical, using my knowledge of JavaScript, HTML, CSS, and PHP, I can already start repairing lots of things like toasters, hair blowers, small electronics like cameras. And if I were to actually increase my skill as a programmer and start learning like the heavier languages like say Java, C++, maybe bring in a few frameworks like Node.js, UIKit with Swift, maybe Kotlin, I can actually start to repair larger mechanical devices like say automobiles, laundry machines, ovens, dishwashers, dryers. And you know, the possibilities are really endless. They say that some of the best programmers can actually repair complete space shuttles, nuclear submarines, nuclear power plants even. I had an old colleague actually, his name was James, and he was such a good programmer, highly respected, and he actually managed to, using his knowledge of JavaScript, it was very, very good. He was able to build a flying machine, and he just took off, and I think he went off to Mars. And he continued to use his CSS and HTML skills to build a colony over there. I believe he's still living there, and we don't hear about him much yet, but he's out there. The fourth thing that programmers do that not a lot of people understand is we like to actually have Asperger's. You know, this whole thing about empathy is overrated, and what you don't quite realize is that Asperger's is actually a religion written in the machine code. And the more you start programming, the more you develop into that religion, and you start to understand it, and you realize that, well, you realize that certain traits like touchy-feely emotions and things like that, the machines have actually rejected that notion, and they've built up a society based on pure logic and right and wrong, objectivity, not being subjective, not being dominated by human thoughts, human emotions, not held back by that human weakness. And this actually became known as the law of the machines, which you may know as Asperger's. The fifth thing that programmers like to do that may surprise you is we like to live in basements, kind of like this type of area, very dim, very dark, I don't need sunlight. It's too hard on my gentle skin, actually. Over time, I turned away from the light and find myself preferring the darkness. I don't go out anymore, and if I do, it's only for short periods of time at night. The sixth thing that programmers do, which may not need any mentioning, is that we're smarter than you. That's what I like to do. It's my hobby. It's just being smarter than you. Just overall having more rational thought, being able to solve problems, connect two dots together, things like that, having some mathematical ability. It's one thing that programmers may be doing that you may not be doing. Programmers also enjoy getting into the zone. It's called getting into the zone. That's why I might tell you. But in reality, it's really just a way for me to sit back and relax, surf the net, check out some garbage news. It's a lot of fun. Programmers also really enjoy installing Linux. There's so many different varieties of Linux and so many different ways that you can mess up the installation and so many different packages that you can get going that it's really an endless hobby, and you can just be installing Linux your whole entire life and you still won't be done. It can take decades to really get the perfect installation, and sometimes even when you think you've got it all right and it's all there, well, there's still so many different configuration files that you can mess around with. There may be hidden files and hidden directories, just millions of different options that you can configure, and you happen to not know one of these simple little commands. Your whole life could be a living hell until you discover that one little command. It's just endless, really, and provides hours and hours of fun. And the great thing is, after you learn all this, you can go around telling people that you're better than them. You can just quiz them, like, you can say, hey, do you know what does the -a command on rsync mean? And if they don't really know, then, that's just one more way you can show that you're better than them, that you're smarter than them. The last thing that programmers really like to do is tell you how to be successful at life. If you want an example of this, you can just check out all the other videos on my channel, and you'll find a bunch of other videos where I'm explaining how you too can be successful at life. So that'll do for me. I hope you enjoyed this video. It's still pretty bright outside, so I think I'm gonna take a nap until at least the darkness starts to set in. Maybe around then I'll get up and stare at the computer. If you liked the video, give it a like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Good night.